When I looked at the numbers, I realized you guys are in the trillions of rands.
I soon learned quickly that to get from point A to point B, it might not be a straight line.
What went wrong there?
At that time, after 10 years, I thought to myself, I don't know if I can do this, over and over again.
And then now you're investing in electric vehicles.
At the moment, our economy is really fossil fuel-based. Transitioning into alternative forms of energy is still going to take a bit of time.
A lot of people want to know about BEE to understand, is it working? How do we make it compliant?
What falls short is the how we implement BEE. I think a lot of that has to do with attitude.
Your track record is amazing. You've done very well. How do you maintain the focus?
I've always strongly believed that we're not one-dimensional human beings. Given the time, the space, and the support, anybody can learn anything and flourish.
Hey guys, I wanted to come on quickly and ask you to subscribe. It helps us immensely when you subscribe to the channel and turn on your notifications. Today's podcast is truly life-changing. I want you to take notes, to learn and absorb as much information as you possibly can from this inspiring story. I was truly inspired. And thank you so much for supporting and viewing the Fix Africa podcast. Share it with at least 5 people to make sure that we grow this channel. Thank you. So, your journey's been an inspirational one, and I think where you are today as an executive in a black investment firm, it's really profound. But maybe let's start in the beginning.
Yeah.
Where did Ronnie grow up?
Yeah, that's an interesting story. So I'm from Limpopo. So I grew up in a small village called Sianda in Venda. Born and bred there. So both my parents were teachers. My dad was a high school teacher, biology, science, and maths. I think I took a little bit of that from him. And then my mom, primary school teacher, grade 1 and grade 2. So education from an early age was a very, very important value in our family. So I grew up in Venda, did my primary school there in the village. And then 1994 happened, democracy, dawned. And my mom took us, me and my little brother, out of the village. We went to town, Chitandani. That's the only best way. My car doesn't feel right, yet. So they took us to the town school. We were part of that first generation of kids that, went into a multiracial school.
Which school did you go to?
I went to Emmanuel Christian School.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. Of course, growing up in a very strong Christian family background, my mom was like, you're going to a Christian school and that's it. No discussion, end of the story, which is great, by the way. So we learned some really great values there. So the transition from the village to town was quite difficult for me. So firstly, language was a big problem. The only language I spoke at that time was Chivenda. And I can imagine having never been in a classroom of other races. Now I'm learning with Afrikaans speakers, English speakers. They don't look like me. They don't sound like me. English sounded like, I don't know, a waterfall in my ears. I just couldn't figure out what's what. So as a result, they took me a grade back when I went to Emmanuel Christian School.
Oh, because the language they teach in English.
Exactly. So I had to learn, the basics from the beginning, essentially. Luckily, I became a friend with an old school friend of mine, Musa. He was Tsonga. So the two of us, being the one being Venda, the one being Tsonga, there was just no way that we could understand each other except try and find the middle ground in the English. That's how the English actually came. And it came by assimilation, really. But I always, reflect on that story because I guess when you're now here and you sound the way you sound and all of that, people don't quite understand that I wasn't born speaking like this, It came.
And for you, the transition of apartheid kids, white kids and black kids could never go to the same school.
Yeah.
So it happened in that transition where now automatically, bam. How did you find it? As a kid, do you still remember meeting white people? Were you comfortable? Were you
No.
How was that? How was that transition from black only world because of
Yeah.
apartheid special planning
Mm.
into multiracial now? You're seeing white children.
Yeah.
How was that?
No, it was scary. I think the first scary thing was I don't understand what they're saying to me. And as a result, I'm going to be in trouble for anything that I do.
Sure.
The teachers couldn't pronounce my name. My first name is Selibuani, so right now I'm called Ronnie Mulaudzi. People that know me, some will know me as Selibuani, some will know me as Ronnie. Predominantly because we needed to have an English name or a Christian name. And so the teachers just decided, no, we don't understand Ribuani, so you're Ronnie from now on.
Sure.
And so back in the village, I was Ribuani, at school, I was Ronnie. And so it almost felt like I lived in two different worlds and I could never merge them or integrate them.
Yeah.
But it was scary, the transition from, the village, black people only Chivenda. Now, there's Afrikaans, there's English, and, the transition. And then also other languages, Tsonga people there, Pedi people there, Tswana people there, and so it was, quite an interesting, thing to do. It wasn't as daunting though, because also in terms of family background, my mom comes from a mixed family. Her dad was colored, her mom was Swati, Mambuza, and then she married into a Venda family. So you can imagine during school holidays when we go to visit my grandmother, it was a whole pot of everything in one place. So the Tonga speaking people are there. We are there, the only Venda speaking people. My grandfather speaks Afrikaans. My grandmother speaks Swati. It was just like a whole rigmarole of melting pot of South African culture. So I grew up like that. So I think diversity for me had always been like an easy thing to deal with.
And I mean, so you started your career, you studied at Wits, and in the beginning of your career, when you finally left Venda and you came through to Johannesburg, how was that like? What did you study?
So interesting, that one. So the transition again from Limpopo to Johannesburg, very interesting. I'd wanted to study medicine. Like I said, my dad was a science teacher, biology, and so I loved biology. I was very good at it. And so I thought it should be a walk in the park. I had 4 distinctions. I had a scholarship to study at Wits, and life looked really good, and like everything was in place. Got to varsity, and first term, physics, chemistry, life sciences completely obliterated me.
So you made it into medicine, and now you're
I made it into the graduate medical program.
Okay.
Because the mainstream medical stream was full.
There's always that.
All kids wanted to become doctors.
I think also it's just black parents have never understood anything else.
No, they never had
outside of its maths and science.
Exactly. Yeah. So I took the maths stream in high school because I thought it's diverse. I can always pick anything I want. Although I do think now I should have gone the economics route, but anyway, we're here. I guess the two worlds have integrated. But yeah, I mean, going to varsity, wanted to become a doctor. First year showed me flames, and halfway through the first year, I thought, okay, why did I want to become a doctor in the first place? I went to the careers unit. They did an assessment there, something which we didn't really have access to, from my high school. So I did a career assessment there, and the tutor at the time said, "Look, I mean, there are a number of streams you can follow. Your psychology is a good one. You've got the temperament for it." And I thought, okay, psychology, and I never really wanted to become a shrink. Although in high school, I was called the shrink of the class because I was very quiet, listened very well, and I would really say some profound things, I guess. And so I was called the shrink of the class. I thought, okay, it's not something new, so let me see what psychology has for me. Whilst doing that, discovered, there are actually a number of streams of psychology in this space. So industrial psychology sounded very interesting to me because it's a combination of business, policy, and workers. And so you kind of study how that relationship works. That for me was very interesting. And so I ended up taking psychology as a third major. And then my other 2 majors became ecology, zoology, and psychology.
Okay, cool. And I mean, you obviously then started working, and you basically started your career. Did you have any idea that you'd be where you are now as a COO of a black investment firm, or did this just happen to you? What was what is the plan after graduating?
Look, if you had asked me at varsity, I absolutely would not have said I would be where I am today, in the role that I occupy. But yeah, a number of things I think happened whilst at varsity. I think I soon learned quickly that you have to be diverse and adaptable in a changing environment, in a changing world, and that your plan, to get from point A to point B might not be a straight line. It might take a little bit of loops and turns. And so when I finished my degree, I was very fortunate because PwC came to the careers, kind of those career fairs on campus at Wits. And I literally just bumped into it, because I was going to look for my results in the basement downstairs. And I thought, okay, what's happening? There's everybody here and their companies. And, so I started talking to them. And the ladies at PwC were quite interested, so I filled in the form. It was still a manual filling in the form, filled in the form. Had no idea what PwC was or what it did and any of that. And a couple of other companies, Unilever, etc. So I got a call from both PwC and Unilever. PwC, actually, the lady, the HR lady, tells an interesting story because she says, look, we had all of these hundreds and hundreds of forms, and we got to yours, and it was so neat. We thought we need to meet this guy that actually filled in the neatest form we have seen. And that's literally how I started my career at PwC, from a neat form.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, let's jump to where you are now. I mean, you're an executive in a black-owned investment firm, and I think for me it's important to tell those stories because whenever we hear about investment firms, we always hear about the white-owned big sort of investment firms. Yeah. And I think it's beautiful where you are. But how is that environment? Working for a black firm that is doing very well. I mean, when I looked at the numbers, I realized you guys are in the trillions of rands, and I was like,
really?
So you guys are doing very well as a firm. But yeah, how's that experience? Because I mean, you've been in traditional PwC corporate,
yes,
and now you're in something that I think is quite wonderful. How's that?
Yeah, so even that was quite an interesting transition because I did HR for about 10 years of my career when I started. So did PwC, SAB. I was in government also at some point, Department of International Relations, and then went back into consulting and then came back into retail at Massmart. And then at that time, after 10 years, I thought to myself, I don't know if I can do this over and over again because I felt...
Maybe before you continue with the story, I mean, I just want us to go chronologically. Massmart, you were in retail then.
In retail.
Massmart owns Game.
Yes, Macro, DIY at the time, which is now closed.
And I think, they're closing down.
Warehouse.
Because I read something about Games closing down. Or...
Yeah, they've been progressively closing their stores.
What went wrong there? I mean... What do you think went wrong?
I don't know. I think if you look at the Massmart group as a whole, so there's a wholesale division and there's a merchandising division and there's a retail division, and then there's the building, entities. And I think at some point, probably the brands started to cannibalize each other because if you look at Macro very similar to Game.
To Game, yeah.
And then they introduced
I didn't know
food
that
in both.
They own that.
So I think there was a bit of cannibalization that happened within the brands themselves. But also, I don't know if the Game format worked very well for our market. It did very well in the rest of the continent. So in Nigeria, Game was very good. Until the logistics became a problem because getting containers in, etc.
I didn't know that Nigeria had Game as well.
They did.
Okay, so they grew quite big.
They did, yeah, they did. But I mean, doing business in Africa is very challenging, as you can imagine. But I mean, they ventured there. Shoprite is successful because they got the Africa strategy right. Yeah.
But I heard rumors that Shoprite, I think they opened up in Angola or something, and the market there was like, why would people go to the store to buy meat when you can just go to your neighbor who has a farm and you'll cut your piece?
Cut your piece, yeah.
And I thought, what a different market the rest of Africa is. Okay, so you think Massmart maybe should have focused on streamlining some of the stores, and not trying to wholesale everything.
Exactly. But also, if you remember, in 2012, 2013, Walmart bought Massmart.
Oh, yes, yeah.
And yeah, I don't know that merger and acquisition was the best strategy for the Massmart group as a brand. And the integration between the American culture, South African culture, became a very complex thing to grapple with. I remember we were part of the integration team, and there were just things we could never align between the two worlds. So our market is very different to the American market. It's much bigger. I mean, our revenue was in the billions, but still a drop if you look at the bigger scale of what Walmart is globally. So it was a bit of I think that strategy also might have contributed to
that happening. And I think also, I mean, if you look at our retail stores, a lot of them, we have this mall concept.
Exactly.
Everybody wants to go to the mall, and it's a status symbol to say I'm going to the mall.
Yeah.
And you look at Game and Walmart, and they sort of, there's nothing special about going there.
Exactly.
So I think, that mentality is quite spoiled. Oh, that's quite interesting. Okay, cool. So then, yes, let's get back to where you are.
Yeah, so I did that. So my last corporate job was Massmart. I was group HR there. And all this time, the founder of Sakumo, which is where I am.
How old are you? Group HR of Massmart at what age?
I must have been 31, 32 at that time.
Wow,
yeah.
That's massive.
It
Group
is.
HR?
Group HR.
Of the whole mess. So you were running, wow, that's massive. Congratulations. At 31?
At 31, yeah.
So you graduate, PwC.
Yes.
SAB.
Yes. DERCO.
Yeah.
SHL.
SHL, I don't know what SHL is.
Saville and Holdsworth. They did psychometric assessments.
Okay, cool. Yeah. SHL.
Yeah. And then Massmart.
Massmart, Group HR.
Yeah.
31.
Yeah.
That's corporate goals. I mean, 31 years old and you're the Group HR of
early,
$1 billion.
I started
$1 billion. We need to write, people take notes, write neat forms. At 31. You'll be rolling in such. But I mean, that's amazing because I think we don't have enough stories of young Black people that get into corporate and they dominate. And I think that's beautiful.
No, I had really good mentors, and credence to them. And one of them, is this Mpho, who was a group HR executive for Massmart Group at that time. Really saw potential in me, gave me a massive amount of development opportunity, training opportunity. The last stint I did when I was at Massmart was participate in what the Walmart used to call the Emerging HR Leaders Program, where you literally, get together with all, kind of talent from around the world. And we go to Bentonville, Arkansas, the US, and it's literally a farm town, but nonetheless, it's run by Walmart.
Yeah, Walmart.
Bentonville.
What state is that in?
Yes, Arkansas, and so it was quite a great way to learn from a number of other HR professionals from different markets. Latin America, North America, the UK, Australia, Asia. And so I was the only African kid there in this HR Directors Emerging program, and so it was quite I think credence to Mpho for giving me an opportunity to learn. Yeah,
I think I love that, but I often say that there's so many people out there that don't have mentors, and they all look out and they're like, oh, should I get a mentor? Should I not get? Do you think that mentors do give that leeway in life that you're able to progress much faster with a mentor?
Absolutely. It's a mentor, I think, in any profession and any field is absolutely essential. Because what they help you do is navigate better the environment and the landscape, but they also have access to networks you don't have access to. And so they're able to bring you along into spaces into conversations, onto tables where you might not actually get access to yourself directly.
That's profound.
So I think for me that was always and all of my bosses that I worked for, they're still my friends even today from my very first job.
Okay, wow. So you don't burn any bridges?
No, I try not to, but if as far as and as much as I can, because relationships are what really makes the world go round, and if you destroy them as you move along, you are short-circuiting your own growth in the future. And so that for me has always been very important.
That's profound. Looking at your role, I mean, so you've played a very strong HR role in many companies. And I've often said that talent or who you hire in companies is very important.
Yeah.
But according from you, I mean, as an HR executive, or you've held those positions, how important is that role to the success of the company?
It's central to any business. People are the way that businesses make money. And that's why, people, we know the cliches, people are our biggest asset, our greatest asset. And yes, they are actually, if we think about it. And people grow together with the company. So the same way that your financial assets are growing, your human capital asset is also growing together with that. And so who you bring in is central to whether or not you achieve your strategy. That's why talent at senior levels, executive level, is very important. You won't go far if you've got the wrong people in the wrong places.
And how do you spot that? I mean, as an executive, how do you spot the right talent to execute on a strategy?
Hey, you're asking difficult questions, eh?
People want to learn.
It's not an absolute science. Some of it is very intuitive. I think I learned over the years that there's what we used to call it SAB, tacit knowledge, about a candidate or about a person, whether they're internal or they're external. You just know that there's something special about this person.
You know that this person is going to sell Castlelite.
You know they're going to sell it and get your volumes right.
Okay, that's interesting.
But it's really a combination of many things. So as an industrial psychology graduate, I did psychometric assessments, and so there are a number of ways of determining whether someone is a good fit.
Do those play a role though in final hiring processes?
They do.
But what about people that, because I mean, I've taken a psychometric, and I always found that the answers were you could manipulate them to tell a story. Or do you think that even in doing that, you still fall part of they can see it to be like, oh, so this one is, okay.
Yeah, so psychometrics, they're very complex instruments that we use in hiring and also development. I think over time I've preferred them now more for development than I do for hiring, because I think hiring is a lot more dynamic. They do give us additional information about a person, right? And usually they are quite right and quite accurate. You can't manipulate psychometrics.
You can't frame the story.
No, because they've got built-in checks. It's almost like you probably see that they ask you the same question different ways a number of times down the assessment. It's to check for the validity of your answers.
Okay, interesting. Let's move. So, because I still think you can manipulate them if you're trying to tell a story.
Never. I can guarantee you that you cannot.
Maybe we need them in politics. I think that's one area where we need.
Please, absolutely. At least a personality inventory test.
A little bit before we go in.
Yes.
Cool. Let's talk about where you are. And I think while I was just doing some research on you, I looked at where you work, and I thought. The first thing I thought was the name. That was the first guy. I said to the guys, I'm like, guys, what does this name mean? And they're like, it means building wealth.
Yes.
I'm like, who calls an investment firm building wealth? But I love that.
Our crazy founder does, yeah.
Yeah, no, I love it. I love it, yeah. And I mean, when I looked at the projects you guys did, I began to realize that you're one of the biggest Black-owned investment firms out there. And I think that's inspiring. Let's talk about that. So when did you join them?
So I joined in.
Firstly, pronounce the name because I couldn't.
Sakumo.
Okay, we're building wealth.
Siaka actually. Building wealth, but in the economy.
I love that. In the economy. I love that.
Yeah.
How did you join them?
So my mentor, who's the founder of the company, Mr. Professor Mpho Dagada, I knew him from Wits. So when I was doing my final year, and this is quite an interesting story because it will bring in your rival in politics, who was at that time a very good friend of mine in varsity, Mboiseni. So he became the president of our social club on campus, Christian Action Fellowship. So church was always a part of me.
Was
okay. He became president actually.
Wow.
And I was in his committee in that year, 2006.
That's interesting. Oh, no wonder he has the singing gospel. Whenever I've heard him sing political songs, I'm like, there's some anointing coming through.
There's some anointing right there.
Okay, all right. Cool. Shout out to Mboiseni. Shout out to Dr.
Mboiseni, yes.
Yeah,
we actually had a trio, the three of us. We did like 1 or 2 gigs in Mpumalanga, varsity.
Oh, so that's where your singing comes in. Okay. Must come for lessons.
Yeah. So during his term on campus, he had an idea that we should invite, some of the stalwarts of our organization on campus, who had been at Wits, but were now, captains of industry and business. And so, my current boss, is the founder of Sakumo, was one of the people that we invited to talk about leadership. So it was around August, September, and it was really during that time that I met him. And from that moment on, he kept kind of a watch on my career. So he had wanted that when I graduate, because that was my final year, that I joined them immediately at Sakumo. So I said, no, I want to get into corporate, do my stripes, earn my stripes there, and maybe in time I will come through to Sakumo. And I think, every other year I'll be like, okay, so now what's the story? No, now I'm at SHL. Now, no, I'm at Derco. Now, no, Massmart. No, I've got a thing in the US with Massmart. No, and now,
Wow. It's
So-
interesting that you say this, because I'm just thinking about he's thinking to say when he spots talent, he follows up.
Exactly.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Very
That
brilliant.
follow-up really, really helped,
Brilliant.
And so eventually at some point he stopped asking, right? And then I did my stint at Massmart, did everything. And I was quite happy, and I was in a very good space. But I thought, okay, I can't be doing this for another, 30 years. It's 60, I'm 31. So it's a long way to go to do the same thing over and over again.
And you'd already reached, you're already the
I
group at 31.
no,
So
I was like, what else am I going to do in this HR space, I think I always knew that I could be stretched a lot more. I had more potential than my current role and my current field of study and specialization. And so I got in touch with him. I said, look, sir, I think I'm ready to make a transition now. Do you have any roles? He said, I don't have any roles, but I'm still very keen for you to come over. Think about it. When you're ready, we can talk about how that looks like. I was saying to one of your colleagues earlier, I went in as a director with no portfolio, actually.
okay.
Because he said, okay, come in, look at what we do, and find your niche. So I didn't go in there knowing that I'm going to become the COO of the group, So I was as a director. And then what then transpired is, as an executive chairman, as he was doing the deals and chasing all of that, all the operational stuff started to, suffer. And so I was picking up all the operational stuff, from him. And he would say, no, please go do this, go do that. We need to bring in a CFO, find me someone, we need a governance process in place. We need policies, for this. We need.
Was there
et cetera.
HR at that time? Or
No.
Oh, okay, cool. So you just
The
started.
company didn't even need an HR person.
I see. Okay,
Yeah,
it wasn't.
investment firm, 21
Yeah.
people at that time. All he needed was operational support, because doing deals, you need to nurture relationships more than actually operate the business.
I think you must just add black-owned investment firm.
Black-owned
For
investment
me
firm.
to be important. I love it. Okay, cool. So that's amazing.
So
Okay.
that's how I then transitioned from corporate into a black-owned investment firm.
Wow, that's phenomenal. And when you got in and you started playing this role of COO, I mean, you came from companies that were sort of built by the conglomerates or global,
Yeah.
PwC, SAB,
Yeah.
etc. And now you're coming into a black-owned space
Yep.
where we weren't allowed to do these things 30 years before. What was it like? What was that transition like?
It was quite an interesting. It was scary. I won't lie. And the learning curve was so steep. I was saying to one of your colleagues earlier that the first meeting I was called into, so the company had just finished the Total transaction, and they'd done it the year before, so 2015. So I joined 2016.
What transaction was this?
So they'd acquired in a consortium 25% of Total SA.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
The petrol business or
Yes,
cool.
the oil and gas business.
Cool.
Yeah. And so part of that deal was that they were going to then develop, about 20 or 21 service stations to assist in paying back that loan. I mean, that loan was like 1.8 billion, to acquire that
To acquire
stake.
25%.
25%.
Rand or dollars?
Rands.
Okay, cool. So
Rand.
25% stake, 1.8 billion, and you're going to refurbish or rather fix 21 service stations.
Or develop them from the ground up.
Or from the ground
Yeah,
up. Okay,
fuel
cool.
service stations.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just explain that, especially for our viewers. So was the business deal based on them doing that? Is that how they were going to repay back that?
Partly, yes.
Okay,
So
all right.
it was going to pay back the loan through dividends,
Okay.
but the retail strategy was also instrumental to fast track payment of that, because you can imagine interest on 1.8 billion is not small change
Yeah.
for a black firm.
Yes, yeah.
And
but that's big in 2015.
Yes, in 2015, it was
Sure.
quite a big transaction, and we're still in there. Actually, it's our final year, next year Feb or so. I think it comes to term. And yeah, hopefully we can stay in. But it's been a really, really good
Wow.
learning. And so I think for me, what then created a very nice transition from HR into this was the fact that I'm always learning something new about a new sector, a new industry, almost to expertise level. Because if you're an owner in an oil and gas business, you have to understand what's going on there.
Yeah, to be able to account for it.
When the board packs come, you need to be able to unpack them and say where are the areas of strategic focus for yourselves.
Before we get into that, I'm just thinking, have you watched the show Billion?
Yes, yeah.
And I'm thinking, so yes. Were you working for Bobby? He just wakes up in the morning, he's like, oh, I like that petrol station, Total, let's buy 25%. This is how we're structuring the deal.
Not quite like that.
So Billions is lying to people.
Similar. No, I think
very similar.
It's a very good understanding of how private equity and investment firms actually work. Yeah.
Cool. So I mean, I love what you're saying, because I've always thought that when you're an investment bank, and I think people, well, I'll use the term investment banker, but you get where I'm going.
Yeah.
People usually say that, one of the highest paying jobs in America is an investment bank or a private equity. Even in South Africa, yes. Is an investment bank or a private equity firm, that they get paid so much. And I had a gentleman say, but hold on, if you're a doctor, you're saving lives. They were just sort of bantering each other to say, but medicine should pay higher. And this guy said to the other guy that if you're an investment banker and you're in health, you know more than what a doctor would know about a hospital.
Absolutely.
Because not only do you know the doctor's role, you know the nurse's role, you know the janitor's role, you know how the hospital functions, you know how the equipment functions. And he broke it down to me in that way to say, you essentially have to study being a all-rounder in medicine for you to be able to invest in that. Yeah. So I think that's profound. So you had to learn and teach yourself.
So the first meeting, that was a deal on the table, coming with this retail strategy. And now, and so when I got in, the investment team at that time were busy trying to understand, okay, how should we look at these agreements for the retail strategy? Because it was about a facility for 300 million, How should we negotiate this with the funders? How should it look like? How are we going to do it? How many are going to be refurbs? How many are going to be, building from the ground up? And how does it look like, So you can imagine, there I am. The only context I have is HR. And I'm hearing all of these jargon.
300 million here, we'll move this billion there.
And I'm just thinking, oh my goodness, So that meeting, the only thing I could do was take like copious amounts of notes. I still had that notebook, It was literally notes and notes. And so at points, Google, trying to Google this word. Okay, that's anybody looking at me, But that's literally
how old were you then?
I was probably 33.
33. Yeah. Okay, but that must have been thrilling learning about all those things.
It was.
And I mean, so from that environment, I know the investment firms invest in many different industries. From that environment, I'm sure you've had to work on many more deals like that.
Yeah. No, absolutely. So from there, we did a deal in agriculture. So we bought a citrus farm in Limpopo.
Okay.
We did an electric vehicle deal, Electric. Mpho Dagada. Love that girl so much.
Maybe before we get to the electric, because I can see you're passionate about it, let's talk about the deal for the citrus farm, because I've come to understand that the oranges that are produced in South Africa don't actually land up here. They all of them go here.
It's an export business.
It's an export business. And I was very shocked, because I was like, you sort of just see things on the store and you think, Let's talk about that. What percentage of that market, what's going on there?
Yeah, so I mean, we've been there for about 18 months, maybe 2 years now.
Okay.
It's been a very tough season because that farm produces table grapes and also citrus. So navels, oranges, those kind of products.
Sorry, you'll forgive me. I don't know what table grapes are.
No,
Are those
okay,
grapes? Oh, okay.
Call them table grapes,
yeah.
grapes.
Coming here with this investment
Grapes.
firm knowledge. Grapes. Cool. Okay.
Yeah, but interestingly, about 98% of that product is actually for export markets. So Russia, the UK, predominantly.
And what do they do with it there?
It's for retailing.
Oh, okay. So they don't make wine or juices.
No,
okay.
It's for retailing. We don't sell for manufacturing, for production here.
Okay.
Yes.
It's strictly for retail.
It's strictly for
that
retail.
I'm sure that business is so complex because firstly the weather.
Oh,
secondly,
I was going to come to that, yeah.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about the road. Yo, okay, take us in there, yeah.
Yeah, so agriculture generally is quite a risky industry to invest in because there are just factors you can't control. They are acts of God, and so in the first year of that investment, we had the worst floods in Limpopo. Too much rain for grapes isn't good.
I see.
Yeah.
Snap. So first year. And these are the parts that people need to understand, that when you're an investment banker, it's not Bobby Axelrod every day winning.
No.
That you can invest into something and yeah.
I mean, the numbers can look good when you are doing your due diligence and, you're valuing the business and all of that. But the reality on the ground can be something different. What's on paper and what's on the ground can be very different things.
Sure. Okay, cool.
But also, people that are selling their businesses, they want to maximize their profit, from all the work they've put in and their investment also. And so they want to get something out. And it's not uncommon that people will slightly, inflate the price of of their stake.
Have you found that's the culture though?
Yeah, people do that all the time.
So everybody out there who's, because, you hear, and I always say in America, when I ever used to watch the shows, I used to think these numbers are so samthak. Like you watch the shows and this guy's like, what's the valuation there? It's like, oh, we're $100 million based on this. And I'm like, but why are you basing it on something that we all can't agree on?
Or even basing a valuation on future growth.
Yeah.
So that's usually where the inflation comes in, because then you say, no, my business has got X, potential X, and therefore pay for it now. Whether or not you realize that future potential
it's just on paper.
Be there if they've sold you the whole business, It's just on paper. The projection looked good.
Sure. Okay. So yeah.
Yeah. So there was lots to learn there, but agriculture, very risky business. And so the weather was against us in the first year. They had just bought, what they call biological, capital, which is seeds, and started growing, a new section of the farm.
That's another interesting world I've heard of, that seeds. Because I said to somebody, I was like, oh, seeds are seeds. They were like, no, seeds are patented, seeds are sold, seeds are traded, even on stock markets, seeds are
valuable commodities. You'd be shocked.
It's a bit like oil, gold, and
we actually own a seed business, Africa Seeds Group. Yeah, that's also a business that we own.
Oh wow!
It's a cell trading business essentially.
And you sell seeds?
We sell seeds.
I guess the politician in me would say, why are people buying seeds? If God designed everything to have a seed in it. But the businessman in me would say, interesting. So do you genetically modify those seeds to be able to withstand certain things?
Well, I don't know that they do that, but I think there's a certain process that goes into that, making sure that seeds are durable, they last, that they don't, get infected by all kinds of biological, diseases that are unwanted, but also to maximize yield of a seed, So, I got to learn that in fact, every seed has got a particular potential or max weight can actually produce or yield, and you can actually either increase or decrease that, and over time the value of the seed also determines where the type of yield it can give you.
Sure.
And so over time that deteriorates, so the fresher or the newer the seed is, the higher its potential to give you the best yield.
Yo, I'm just thinking about the amount of reading or research you must do. Like, here you are, you're an HR guy, you now understand petrol, you now understand seeds.
Agriculture and seeds, and electric vehicles. And
let's talk about it, because you're quite excited about, but also just to juxtapose, so you guys, and I know that obviously there's a method to this, but you guys invest in Total, which is a petrol. Well, the end one of the products is petrol,
Yes,
diesel,
diesel.
and then now you're investing in electric vehicles.
Yeah.
So that's kind of interesting juxtapose. Let's go into electric vehicles.
Yeah, it does sound contradictory, doesn't it? But
yeah, it does. But I can see where it joins in.
yes.
Yeah. Because instead of us pouring petrol, would now be boosting charging.
Yes.
Or, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I mean, the at the moment, I mean, our economy is really fossil fuel based, and so it's going to be for quite a while. Transitioning into alternative forms of energy is still going to take a bit of time for us because they're not cheap. Also, those alternatives. And we've got an electricity problem as well in this country. The supply is not as steady and reliable, which we shall keep it at that. But notwithstanding, there is opportunity for us to explore alternative forms of energy. And interestingly, this deal, when it came, Everelectric, it came during COVID in 2020. And it was Ndia and her two business partners that had studied together at I think UCT, all three being accountants. Came literally, it was on paper. We've got this idea.
So these are students, studied accounting. We've got this idea.
Yeah, but I mean at that time they'd worked.
And are these female? What was
black female and two white males. So all three
okay,
friends.
Okay. Let's focus on the black female.
Hence I said Ndia. So she's one of the founders and co-founder and CEO of the business. We liked that she was involved in the business as a black woman, and she owned 30% of the business. So we found that to be quite an interesting ownership structure, but also they had quite a compelling business case, at that time, it was literally on paper. It had never been tested. They just had this idea that we can actually make an electric vehicle business work in this country, especially during this time when there is COVID and people are, thinking about how clean the environment is and how much reduction there's been of carbon in the air because people are at home, So we looked at it and we thought this is quite an interesting value proposition. I think they'd gone probably everywhere to try and get funding. They couldn't get funding. And we thought, okay, we'll be early investors in this. We believe in it.
This is why we need more black
firms. We're going to fund the proof of concept. And I think at that time they had Woolies.
I'm literally so happy. Like the fact that we've got a black investment firm that's able to spot a black woman trying to change the world and funding the proof of concept. This is gold. I mean, it's beautiful.
I think based on my knowledge at that time, it was a first of concept of its kind in South Africa. And so, it was quite compelling, and we thought, we can take risk on this one. By the way, our investment strategy usually is brownfields only, so companies that we know have got a track record, strong management, strong financial performance, invest, in the expertise of management and the fact that they can pay dividends, new businesses and, early, not so much. But this one was different. And we thought there is a business case there to support, and so we put in I think 5 million in the first phase.
Nice, based on nothing. Proof of concept is something. Yeah, so
we're like, guys, okay, that's fine. Get these 5 electric vehicles. I think at that time they had Woolies, DSV, and DHL probably to do the POC. But I think Woolies had a bigger interest because they've got quite a big interest in ESG, and they've got a green strategy which is quite robust. So first year they did that using the 5 vehicles. I believe Woolies were quite impressed with the results, the reduction in carbon footprint, reduction in cost on fuel, all of those nice metrics they want to tick off and say yes, this makes sense. And so, a couple of years later, this was 2020, when 2024, that business is valued quite significantly. I don't think they'll be happy if I say what that number is.
I think I'm gonna call it in for an interview. Well, because I think I'd love to do that.
Please invite Mpho Dagada, Everelectric. She is phenomenal.
Definitely.
She's phenomenal. Yeah.
So we'll definitely we'll definitely bring her through, because I think for me, I've always said that we need to tell proper African stories that speak to what we're building, so that people can see that it's on the come up. That's beautiful.
To wrap that up, so 4 vehicles when they started with the POC, and now I think they'd ordered 80 vehicles last year, which I think are all now fully deployed. And so
here in South Africa.
So Johannesburg, Cape Town, and Durban.
Wow.
the hubs, the economic hubs.
I love it. I love it. We're definitely going to invite her. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
So I mean, and I think I've got so many questions, but
there won't be enough time.
Yeah, but I think let me come maybe and circle in, because there's a BE compliance sort of role that you've sort of played, right?
Yes,
and I think
yes.
a lot of people want to know about BE to understand, is it working? How do we make it compliant? How do we? So I want to touch on that before we go into some of the boards that you've sat into. So maybe let's start there. What was your role there? Maybe.
Yeah, look, sure, BEE. My goodness, I've got a lot to say about BEE. Being a black firm that that actually leverages that legislation. Look, BEE, I believe it's a good instrument to try and foster transformation of the economy, right? And I'd wanted to do a PhD on that, by the way, which I've put on hold for now.
Okay, a PhD in BEE.
I'll go back there. Yeah. But I think what then falls short is the how we implement BEE, and I think a lot of that has to do with attitude. Really, unfortunately, it's the human factor that we still have to deal with, the mindset of corporate South Africa. And you hear, I mean, everybody's saying, yeah, we want to follow the spirit of the BE, legislation, and not the letter of the law and all of that. The spirit, if everybody followed it, would be a lot further than where we are now. And so then you find that the letter of the law has to come a lot more into play to force people to comply. And so to force people to comply, you force them to tick boxes and say, yes, we've got 3 black managers, 1 black female on the board, It's a tick box exercise. And so I think that's where the implementation of the legislation is falling short. In itself, if you look at it, I mean, there were great minds that worked on that legislation, Abo Polo Liteka, the founder of DFI, so it's, I mean, the legislation in itself makes a lot of sense. How we've implemented it over the last couple of years, since, 2003, when it was promulgated, is the problem. And so if we don't fix that, we're not going to see the economy transform. If we don't fix the way that corporate South Africa looks, at black people, black executives. I was just talking about this other day, that it's unfortunate, and I'm glad I worked in corporate for quite a while in HR. And you spoke about, how do you make these decisions? And sometimes there really is no objective metric. It's a matter of, I feel comfortable as an executive to work with so-and-so versus so-and-so. So-and-so looks like me, sounds like me, speaks like me. And if you are a black person speaking the way that I speak, you almost tick those boxes, right? You're almost the better black, if I can put it that way. And so there are those dynamics in corporate. And so the people that don't really look like you, because they've got support, and we spoke about mentorship, they are trusted, they are really earmarked early for senior roles anyway. It's not even a question of, it's a question of
the
when.
uncle spoke to their aunt at the boss barad.
Correct, and they said, give my son a chance, For black people, there are not a lot of us saying, give my son.
And also your parents are not at the boss parade. They're in
not.
the rural
They're
areas.
In the rural areas.
Yeah.
They're not in the right places.
The language
to influence.
even is, yeah.
And so you find that a lot of how corporate looks is based on that. The other day I was doing a talk at UNISA. We spoke about the hidden job, job economy, because it's there. It's hidden.
It is, yeah.
It's those jobs you don't advertise on LinkedIn and on the paper and everything.
And even if they do advertise them, it's just an exercise, ticking box.
It's to say we did advertise. We didn't find anybody in the market, because already there's someone earmarked, for that. We talk about succession as a way to transform boards, as a way to transform, executive management teams, to transform the JSE. All of those things, unless the attitude changes, we're not going to see a lot of change. And the most unfortunate part is, as black people, once we get into those roles, we have very little influence. Our voices are not as influential as they should be to change the direction of where things should go. And the conversations, just the other day, actually literally yesterday, I was on a call with a friend who's got a client in Durban. They've literally reached a boiling point where the Indian people are against the black people, are against the colored people. No, this company is run by these people. This company, they down tools at some point, and it's racial tension in an organization that has been festering for many years, has never been dealt with because we never want to deal with transformation issues, and they're real issues and they're personal issues. And even when you listen to the brief, that you can tell there is a lot of pain in this HR director's voice around what is happening in the business, and it is because all of these racial issues have been festering over time. Nobody says anything about them. We all see and you talk at the water cooler and at the coffee station, but there's no platform in that environment to say, how do we actually address this constructively and have a harmonious work environment until things literally, boil over and break.
Sure.
So, it's literally yesterday. And you'd think 30 years into our democracy, we should be further. We are nowhere near
where we're supposed
to be. And it's tragic.
So BEE does work. It's just that the people that are supposed to be implementing it are just not coming.
The power sits with the CEOs, CEOs of all the companies, listed, non-listed, SMEs, you name it. It sits, the decisions to transform sit with those people.
Sure.
Unless they change their attitude and their mindset towards BEE as a tool for transformation and really equalizing the playing field, we're not going to get far.
I think the other day I said to somebody that when Time Bank started, I opened up a Time Bank account and somebody said, oh, the Time Bank is focusing on a low income market.
Yeah.
And then they were like, why would you open it? And I said, just because it's black.
Black, yeah.
And they said, oh, but it's not fully black. And I said, well, out of all the other ones, it's the one that is the least black that and it was a painful thing because I had to look at all the banks and say, none of them are black to start with. But the one that has the glimpse of black, So yeah, I agree with you that we definitely need to transform there. Maybe let's move into, I wanted to go into strategy development. I don't know if I should.
I love that topic.
Should we go into strategy development?
Cool. We'll be here forever though.
Because we still need to get to the boards, but let's get into strategy. So, I've heard strategists, and I recently sat with somebody. I remember I had a meeting with somebody and I asked them, they were in marketing before, and I asked them, I was talking to them about marketing, and they're like, well, nope, I've moved, I'm now a strategist, And I thought, okay, interesting. And when I spoke to them, they sort of made it seem like strategy is the core of a business. But I was like, you were in marketing, what if you're selling strategy as But let's go into it. How important is strategy, and have you seen strategy change stuff?
Yes, I have. And strategy is important, by the way. I know the word sounds very intimidating and it sounds very academic, but strategy is actually a very, very practical thing, right? And I think I only really fully appreciated it until I got to Sakumo. Before that, I used to be a consultant and I used to write beautiful papers, on strategy. Some of which probably were not very useful.
Consultants, I've always had an issue with them, but let's not get into it.
We are very good with
billing.
We're very good with billing and using our words. But really, strategy for me is it's really just about how a business prioritizes the activities it needs to get done to achieve its objective. So as a business, why are you here? And if you can answer that question, you can answer then how do we achieve, the purpose of why we exist.
So the activities and achieving. So it brings together the what happens and the goal.
Exactly. And I mean, it's been quite a journey with where I am, having, helping the board understand the importance of strategy and how to craft it. Initially when we were crafting the first strategy that I designed for the group, it people always feel like there should be more to this document. It should be a lot more substantial. We can't just have 3 objectives or 5 objectives. They have to be 10, 14. And so we started with 14. And I remember saying to my boss, I said, look, this is a lot for a business. 14 things, it's a lot of things to chase. Some of these things that I hear are actually enablers to the core strategic objectives we must focus on.
You definitely need to come back for a podcast on strategy development for business owners, because I can really see a business owner saying, we're trying to achieve 25 things, and you look at you like, this is not going to fly.
No. And we started with 14, and eventually, in the last cycle, I stuck to my guns and said, we are not having more than 5. Whatever we do in this session, we're coming out of here with 5 main things to do. And you know why? Because it's easy to mobilize the business on 5 things that everybody can wake up in the middle of the night and sing and say, the 5 things we're chasing this year are, or the next 5 years are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And true to that, after we developed those 5, in every staff meeting that I have, that my first question is, what are our 5 strategic objectives? And everybody knows them. And they know them one word each, because I said each objective needs to be able, we need to be able to say it in one word.
I can see the neatness coming in.
And so I think that's very important. And the way we have really focused, and that's really assisted us to craft our investment strategy as well, because everything flows from the group strategy, right? And so understanding how we need to monitor the investments, do post-investment monitoring, reporting, understanding which metrics to design to understand whether or not our investments are growing, which ones are at risk, what we need to do to exit if we need to exit, or to stay on, do we refinance, do we not refinance, do we, what do we do? And so those 5 objectives have helped us, just hone in into what our activities are for the next 5 years, which I couldn't be more satisfied and more happy. I'm just like, yes, this is what I'm talking about, This is how you achieve strategy and bring it down to the level of the cleaner. Our office cleaner will tell you what our 5 objectives are.
I love black businesses.
And I said to her, Mam Ninki,
every day.
How so cleaner mo the boardroom, how so bona re up and down ka di file, re tsang hantle. And the satisfaction of seeing all levels of the organization railing up,
and understanding
how important it is for me to know, okay, when the chairman is having a meeting with so-and-so from the bank, and making sure that they get their tea, their coffee the right way, that small gesture actually facilitates a R1 billion
and
conversation.
It's part of the strategy.
It's part of the strategy,
Oh, I just want to say, all other firms out there, I'm coming for you. I love it. Wow, I love that.
Yeah.
I think let's move on, because there were a couple of other things, but I think I want to sort of get into. So you're part of the Institute of Directors, or you were. I don't know if you're still.
I'm a member.
You're a member, right, of the Institute of Directors in South Africa. What is that?
So it's an NGO, but it's a member-based NGO. Which looks to training, developing, and empowering directors. They've built a curriculum. In fact, one of the founders, Mr. King, was part of he's one of the founders of the King Codes. So he's the father of governance, corporate governance, essentially. Yeah.
Okay. Oh, the King. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Okay. So that institute, is it available for people to be able? What?
Yeah, anybody can join as long as you are an executive, you sit on a board, or you are in senior management. It's really
able to.
Yeah, they've got different training programs at different levels. You can be a chartered director, you can be, an associate director. There are different levels that you can apply to become.
That's amazing. And I mean, that leads us nicely into you've sat on boards, very interesting boards. But I want us to talk about Pick It Up. You were
Lord.
a board member there. For those that might not know, Pick It Up is a government institution that basically cleans up.
They pick up waste.
Yeah, they pick up waste. Yeah. Let's talk about that because a lot of people are very interested in the first thing. Let's maybe get the elephant out of the room. People say, and I've heard a lot of people say this, they say, I just want to study, get an MBA, and sit on boards and travel the world and earn lots of money. So let's start there. Do board members get a lot of money?
Some of them do.
Okay.
The bigger companies, the listed companies, they do pay decent board fees. So you can be a career boardist. Yes.
What does that money look
term.
like? What does the money look like?
No, I mean, some of it is regulated, or let me say there are guidelines that the Institute of Directors also gives. So if you're a company with a market cap of this size in this sector, your range, your entry, your median point, your top, this is how you pay for an ordinary board member, for a chair of a committee, for a board chair, so they would have the various salary scales or fee scales, let me put it that way. So some of them can be quite lucrative, which is why you see a lot of people sit on several boards of the big companies that are listed, and they can make quite a good living from there.
Interesting, a boardist. So let's talk about it. What was your experience at a sort of government institution, and you were sitting on the board? What did you learn?
So sure.
Or what did you go through?
I think we can stick to what I learned. Because what I went through is also a lot. I don't know, some of it can be said here. But it was quite an interesting one. So if you remember, Dr. Mpho was still mayor at the time that they did a board rotation or needed to appoint new boards across the city of Johannesburg. It's about 13 entities. And so, some of us got invited. I think at that time their focus was we want to renew the boards and have professional people
in the boards. I remember that stint where a lot of people were saying that because she came in, she's a doctor, she's also felt that.
Yeah.
And people said it was classist. And I said, well, you can't, education is not about,
exactly.
It's different. But anyway.
Yeah.
Cool.
And so that was the idea. And so, we got invited to apply for those roles. They were rotating all the boards of all the 13 entities. So you can imagine each board probably holding about 10 or so directors. It's quite a few people to look at. And so, I went through the process, got appointed. It was a year's service. And I think there was quite a lot I learned about corporate governance in local government. Firstly, you have to deal with the PFMA, you have to deal with the Municipal Systems Act, you have to deal with all the other,
More learning.
And everything has a particular way in which it should work. And then I get there, we get appointed, our board chair, Dr. Natasha is brilliant. She's an environmentalist, of course, because we're in Pick It Up, our work affects the environment. We report into the MMC for environment. And then we needed to appoint the different chairs of the committees, and I got appointed for the infamous committee, HR remuneration committee and transformation. So I mean, I put my hand up. I said, look, I'll chair it. I've got the experience.
What's the pay to be on those boards? I mean, it should be public information, right?
I don't know if it's public information.
Okay, but you don't have to tell if you're not comfortable. Cool.
But it's not a lot of money. It's public service. So it's not like a listed entity on the JSE. It's essentially just to thank you for your time, because I mean those board meetings can take the whole day, and they're quite intense because outside of the corporate governance issues you must deal with, you've also got the political that you must integrate in that process. And there's a lot of interference. At some point, I remember during our term, because of the transition of power between Mpho and the new guy that came from Alger,
Ma. We must get the
There
mayor,
was,
guys. We must get the mayor of the city on the podcast.
There was quite a lot that happened there. There were moratoriums put on boards not to hold meetings, to request, And I remember the Institute for Governance actually wrote a piece, the CEO of the Institute for Governance wrote an opinion piece after they saw the moratorium that went out from group governance, the city of Johannesburg, because it's literally unlawful. Boards are independent for a reason. So the shareholder cannot direct the activities of the board. The Companies Act directs activities of the board. And so it was quite interesting. They had to write a paper and say, how unconstitutional, how unlawful that directive was from the city of Johannesburg to say boards can't hold unless they ask for permission to have a board meeting. Can you imagine? You're a director and, But so the political and the corporate governance always were at odds with each other. And so, I think there was a lot to learn there.
I think that's profound because we must separate the two and we must ensure that the two can function.
Absolutely.
Let's look at, so obviously, within everything that you've sort of done, there's a lot of people that are listening here saying, I'm in my career. How do these people get it right? Because a lot of people usually ask themselves to say, okay, cool. So, your track record is amazing. You've done very well, but how do you maintain the focus? Because I would imagine that in each role you've played, you sort of had to study so much content that one would qualify it as a degree or diploma in those areas. So how do you go about managing your career or managing yourself?
I think I've always looked at my career or even myself as a brand. And so the same way that we, at work, we are managing a portfolio of investments across sectors, I'm also, managing a portfolio of skill sets within my own portfolio as a person, as Ronnie, And so there's an element which is academic, which is where the PhD comes in. And I'm going to pursue that. And then there's an element, around the arts, which is music, which I'm going to pursue as well, which I'm pursuing actually. And then there is the career, which is corporate, which I'm already, pursuing, which I think doesn't need really much more, to it. And so all of those things, and of course I do broadcasting and other things. I'm quite a diverse individual, and I think for me, I've always strongly believed that we're not one-dimensional human beings. Given the time, the space, and the support, I think anybody can learn anything and flourish. You can. Sometimes when I talk, people think I'm an accountant or I studied finance. I didn't, but I've been in the space assimilating enough to speak like, I studied it at varsity and I didn't. It was all on the job training, which is important because, like I was referencing earlier, some of us get given the opportunities because, we are trusted based on how we look and how we sound. We don't always use the opportunities effectively or optimally, but nonetheless we get them. The proverb that says, "Mafure whatever kari." And then you find people that with great potential, not getting a lot of the opportunities that if they were to get and be trusted and be supported, they'd really be excellent human beings and contribute successfully. So I think, I've always viewed myself as a portfolio. And every pocket of the skill sets that I have has to be exploited to its full potential.
I love that. I think, so branching into that, your music career, when I first heard your songs, I thought, okay, this is interesting. And because I think when you listen to somebody sing, you always think about, or when you listen to music, you always think about, is this a musician? Is this, what is this, So I heard one of your Chivenda songs and you won the Chivenda Music Award for Newcomer.
Yeah.
And also the Crown Gospel Award and etc. So one would have sort of thought he's winning awards, but he's not a musician? Is he a singer? What is the, So how did that come about? How did you? Because at one point I thought, when I listened to your song, I thought, okay, he's a musician. You almost go that way. But now see, you're like, actually he's a corporate executive, but okay, there's a music
element. Yeah.
So yeah, how did that come about?
Sure. So the music has always been there. I come from a musical family. My mom used to sing in the church choirs. She was a soprano. And I'd always admired her and wanted to be on the stage with her. And so when I turned 13, in church, you are in Sunday school or children's church, then you graduate to big church and you're part of the youth. And so when I graduated into youth, I auditioned for the choir. I got in, sang with my mom. I was singing tenor. She was in the soprano. And yeah, ever since, the music bag has always been there. If I think about Rofiwa, Manyaga, even though we used to form groups, there was a group called Change at some point.
I think I remember Change, yeah.
All public holidays or school holidays, we would be at church.
Yes,
music,
there was an apostle,
singing.
a very thin man who used to preach very powerfully, and I think you guys used to go around with him.
Yes.
I forgot the name.
Yes, Faith Mission Church.
Yes.
So I mean, music has always been there. As a teenager, all the way through varsity, I was singing. At varsity, I was part of two groups, actually. I would sing in the morning in the one, and in the evening, in the other one. Sometimes burn my voice out completely, but I was just singing, but I couldn't do anything until I became financially independent around the music, Like I said, my mother would not hear of it.
I see. Okay, so it was she had the usual vendor mom thing of saying "Utoma paswa chikoro."
Chikoro panda, And so chikoro panda had to happen, and so I did that. Got my degree, started working. But even after working, I was so focused on let me establish myself, in corporate, which I did. Did it my whole decade there, and only in 2015 did I think, okay, maybe it's probably time to explore the music side. And so hosted my first show, which then resulted into an album, which then, other albums, and where I am now.
Nice. And where are you now? I mean, you've got a single that's out, Uyawusa, which is amazing.
Yeah.
What are the plans? Are we getting an album?
Yes. So the single was out 2 weeks ago. The album is coming out on the 14th of June. Very excited about it. And so the question whether I'm a musician or a singer or a what, I don't know. I think a musician is someone that makes music, and I believe I do.
Nice. We look forward to it. Are there any events planned for that? Is there ever going to be?
Not yet. The last show I did was just before COVID in 2019. I was launching my first album then. So if I do a show, it'll be launching my new album, which would be probably this year, October or so. But we'll, keep watching my social media platforms. You'll see.
You see? Nice. I love that. I mean, I always find that everybody does have two things. They always say that very, very gifted people or people that are very learned tend to have what they do and like they have their hobbies. So it's always like a golf or a...
Yes.
Yeah. So I think for you, it might be music.
It definitely is. I've got another friend of mine whose hobby is buying cars and refurbishing them.
Okay.
And he buys like classic cars. Like if it's a Jag, it's going to be like a Jag from 19, I don't know, whatever. And he refurbishes the engine and does this and all of that.
Actually quite cool.
And 300K later, he's just like, this car. And I'm thinking, 300K later, are you crazy,
Oh, wow.
But then if I look at myself, 300K, it's the budget for an album.
Sure. And I mean, so I mean, you raise a good point when you said that you first had to become financially stable before you went into music, because people sometimes think it's just you get a mic and you sing, and I've heard your songs. There's a whole band. It's a whole thing.
It's a whole ecosystem. Eh?
Yeah. What have you found in that? I mean, as somebody coming from, investment firm, and now you're getting into music. Yeah. What are you seeing? Because I mean, I've heard so many stories about how music is actually a beast of a business in terms of it. It
is. No, it's an absolute beast, especially for an independent artist. There's a lot to learn about the business of music, which I think a lot of gifted people don't actually, quite get right. And we see it all the time when they die, and it's tragic. People sign their lives away, and they sign their talent and their IP away. If you think about the inventor of Apple, that's a product. It's trademarked. It's got a patent. a lot of money gets made from that patent. Music is the same thing. A song that you write is an asset. And sometimes
if you don't own that asset,
if you don't own that asset,
you've given away
all the value that you've created.
But so many people complain to say, but it's expensive to own that asset.
It is expensive.
I guess it's part of, it's like any other business. It's expensive to own.
It's like investments, So the guy that takes the risk is the one that, derives the best value from that investment. And so that's why the record labels always seem like they're cheating, artists. But I mean, if you never know whether an artist is going to make it or not, if their sound is going to resonate with the market, if it's going to be a hit or not, And so you take the risk and you hire the band, you hire the studio time, you pay, for mixing and mastering. You do all the sound engineering in the back, all of those things, and then only to find that the market doesn't respond positively. It's like any other product.
So it's a bit like an investment firm where they've invested in seeds. Seeds is R&B. They've invested in petrol. Petrol is the house. They've invested. I mean, I dabbled a bit when we formed the political party. We had to release music because every political party has a song.
Yeah.
And what I did is I just paid somebody to say, oh, can we please get it done? And the person then came back and said, oh, this is what we're thinking, this is what's going on. And I was like, okay, this is not going to work. Maybe can we change this? And they were like, oh, this was done by somebody else. And it got to a point where I had to drive to that somebody else's home and say, why aren't you changing the beat? And he was like, I'm working on other people's projects. I'm like, how does this industry work? And I sat there the whole afternoon working on a beat. Yeah, just the beat.
Just the beat, yeah.
And when we're done with the beat, I was like, yay, the song is done. Then the guy was like, sorry, we have to layer the voices because the beat has changed. And I was like, layer what?
Yeah.
So it's a beast.
It's a whole beast. I mean...
But does the argument hold of saying that because... I guess it does hold because what you're saying is that the record label has gone through so many artists that have been flops and they've spent all that money that when they get the right one, they want to make as much money as possible to fund that business.
Yeah.
Sure.
So it's easier for record labels to work with artists that cannot fund their own work, especially talented ones.
But how do you get it right? Because you're independent, so you funded your own work. But how are you going to get it? Isn't that they're going to hold against you getting it out there?
No, absolutely not. So previously, yes, before COVID, there were a lot of gatekeepers in the music industry, and I think all of us are somewhat, of course, there were very, very bad effects of COVID, but there were also some very, very good ones. And I think for music, what COVID did was that it removed a lot of the layers of the gatekeepers. And also, for me, it looks like at the moment, music is actually driven from the grassroots up instead of top down from the radio stations.
I get what you mean. Because I was wondering, I was like, well, how did COVID? I get what you mean.
And the digital space, because in COVID...
Because I heard Water, Tyler's song, from TikTok.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
TikTok has become the biggest phenomenon for driving new artists and music. And so it becomes very difficult for mainstream media now to ignore an artist. Because everybody's singing Water
should we be shorting record labels? Maybe that's the I hope you guys are not in any record labels as a business. Are you?
No,
okay, good. Guys, short record labels. That's a stock tip. That's phenomenal because I always say to people, I'm like, when you're not in an industry, you don't understand the intricacies. But what you've just explained, you've broken down to say music before it used to be top down because.
The radio station will tell you what you must listen to in your car.
And now it's become the dance move.
It's become
whatever.
The biggest, the next craze on.
So then you don't need the record label if you're good.
You don't actually.
But that would only be, even if you're bad, you still don't need it.
You don't. Because all you need to do is have your smartphone and you use whatever instrument you've got. It can be your voice, it can be your guitar and your voice, and you sing. And people take videos of you. Justin Bieber became big that way also.
And musicians always say that they make money from live performances. The way that I understand it is that the album is just to get you famous.
The album is, it's actually almost like a marketing tool.
I see.
Yeah, it gives you legitimacy.
Not the money. Then the live performances give you.
Yes, because then Because you can imagine you can be a great artist who's performing everywhere, in the restaurants, on the boats, on the cruise ships and everything. But the question always it's going to be, so where do I find your music?
You're right. Yeah. No
So
matter
you have
what
no
stage you've been on.
assets, to point back to.
And what's your goal? Because somebody might be saying, okay, you're already successful, because people there are people who do music as a means of life. So
Yeah.
What is your goal? Because I know it's gospel music.
Yes.
Is it that you're exploring your talent, or you're giving back to God, or honoring God, or is it that is there a direction?
Yeah, it's a ministry for me, essentially.
Okay.
So I've probably spent more than I've made from it, And so for me, it's an expression. It's a way that I express my commitment to God, but also a service to Him and the body of Christ in general.
That's powerful.
Yeah.
It's very powerful. So for you, it's just about ministry. Let me get it out there. Let people use it. Let people enjoy it.
Exactly.
Cool.
And I know, my music is very niche, and it's not for everybody. I think I've made peace with that. And so some people resonate with it and some people won't. And that's fine.
Let's go out there and get this music. Get this music. I think I like what you said. My mind is just spinning around how the music industry has changed, because back to the point, I used to, so I listened to a lot of gospel music, and I used to listen to a lot of gospel music, like worship house. So,
Yes.
the family that I come from, worship house.
I love worship house, yeah.
So before, I used to always wonder and say, but how come people don't know about worship house? And
Yeah.
recently they released a song that went viral on TikTok, and everybody then knew about it. Yeah. So I think that's so profound. And as we bring it to a close, I believe that we've touched on a lot of stuff here. But I think I wanna sort of close it by understanding what future do you envision for corporate South Africa? You've sort of been, you've done very well. You've been in many different roles, many different companies, and you've played your different roles there. And it's always interesting to hear what sort of future should we look forward to, or should we try and build as corporate South Africa?
Yeah, that's a big question, eh? You don't do small questions, do you? I think a lot of it for me is that, corporate South Africa doesn't seem to be changing or transforming. There doesn't seem to be a lot of space for Black people to express their talent and to contribute. Both as workers, but also, as owners of businesses. And the way I think that the economy is structured is exclusionary, by its design. And so, so you've got all of these factors that are preventing, I suppose, us equalizing the playing field for all racial groups in the country. You've got white people feeling attacked as well on the other side, that they are the wrong skin color for certain opportunities. And then you say, but, we need to find a way to redress. We're trying to redress. And so how do you redress whilst not destroying the value that we're trying to co-create all together? And that's why I said, initially that, the mindset, I think, of corporate South Africa really needs to change. Will it change if the actual bodies sitting in the boardrooms are not transformed? It won't. Because it's the people that we should be preaching to are the ones that are, in return, making the decisions that don't actually go with the message that we're trying to get out. And so until you change the complexion of the boardroom, we are going to be in this current state of flux and conflict, about, resources that are quite limited, and how we share them and how we create prosperity for everyone. So I think it really is important for leadership to change its mindset. And for that, and that's why you've got things like, transformational leadership, all of those concepts. They're very beautiful concepts, in theory, but landing them in practice is what's going to actually be effective in helping us move forward.
I definitely agree with that. I think that's very profound and very important. And as we ended, what would you want to be remembered for? What would you want people to remember Ronnie for?
If anything gets to be said about at my funeral, it must be that this guy came to earth and did everything that he had ever wanted to do.
So profound.
Yeah, that's because I really have no regrets now about anything in life. I've tried so many things and some of them have failed dismally. It was just like, okay, this one it's okay, you've done it. But for me, there's still a lot more to explore within my own potential. I've still got quite a few years to live, all things equal, of course. We never know what's going to happen tomorrow. I'm still very young.
Just at 40?
Yeah, I'm turning 40 this year.
Yeah, you're not even at 40.
So there's still a lot to do.
That should be a big birthday. Are you doing something for your 40th?
I'm not a very big believer in birthdays, but I will do something this time.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll do a small celebration of sorts.
I'll wait for my invite.
By all means, yeah. So I think that's really what I want to be known for. I was saying to one of your colleagues, there's nothing ever too difficult or too hard to learn. If we're just trusted a little bit and given support, all of us can thrive in any environment we get put in.
That's profound. Guys, I'm sure you've taken a lot of notes. I'm sure you've learned a lot. I'm certainly inspired. And I'm really grateful for having all this knowledge that you've shared with us. Thank you so much for coming through. It's the Fix Africa podcast. How do we fix Africa in whatever role, industry, or position that you play in life?